One thing almost every Star Wars fan has been wondering since the Last Jedi trailer is what's going on with Luke Skywalker. And really, this is a huge mystery because with his little presence in Episode 7, we really know almost nothing about where Luke is headed in the new trilogy. But we do know that it's not necessarily how Mark Hamill would have handled the character. In a recent interview, he said, "I fundamentally disagree with virtually everything decided about my character."
Yeah. I went to Ryan's office and I was like, we need to have a talk about what's happening here.
When I read 8, I told Ryan, I fundamentally disagree with virtually everything you've decided about my character.
For the sake of clarity, he does kind of rein it in the next sentence by saying, well, that's kind of a good thing, and I was kind of wrong about how they treated Luke in Episode 7. Still, it's interesting that Luke Skywalker himself fundamentally disagrees with how Rian Johnson has written and directed his character. So what does this mean, and should we as fans be concerned? And I'm not really sure about this. On one hand, it does kind of indicate that Rian and the crew were willing to go in kind of a brave new direction with Luke Skywalker. Because with his very clear statement of, I am a Jedi, like my father before me, in Return of the Jedi, and his powerful resistance of the dark side, even in his most difficult moments, it's always seemed clear that Luke would go down one path, and one path only, and that's to be basically a light side Jedi. However, is that what Mark wanted? That's also an interesting question. We don't know whether Mark envisioned Luke Skywalker as being, still the light side Jedi. And in fact, in 2005, he specifically said that post-Empire Strikes Back, he petitioned to George Lucas to have Luke turn to the dark side. But again, that was a different time, and now we've got the events of Return of the Jedi heavily influencing Luke's story arc. And I do just want to kind of bring this back to Mark Hamill as a person for a minute. He's always been very well composed as basically the main star of the Star Wars franchise. He's always been pro-Star Wars, very careful and calculated when he speaks, so I wonder if he were actually worried about Luke's character direction, if he would say something or just keep it to himself. So the way he's talking here kind of tells me that although he may disagree with the direction it took, it still probably worked out in the end. And I think this was confirmed in another interview where he said, I think you'll find some things that will surprise you. They certainly surprised me. I said to Ryan, I think I fundamentally disagree with everything you've decided for me. Now having said that, I have to accept it, get my mind around it, and do my best to realize your vision. Once I got into it, a lot of my fears went away. And there's a couple of other things that make this whole situation a bit more interesting. And one is that Daisy said, it's not always a good idea to meet your heroes. This could clearly be reflecting on Luke not being the Jedi and the man that we expected him to be. Then of course there's a quote from the trailer, which Mark Hamill actually confirms Luke is speaking, where he says that it's time to end the Jedi. So to answer the question I posed at the beginning of this video, should we be worried about the direction that Luke is going in Episode 8? Well, I don't think so. If you want Luke to be a perfect, always light side Jedi, then yeah, perhaps it's time to start getting a little worried. And while Mark Hamill disagreed with some of the decisions made by Ryan, that doesn't mean that those decisions were bad. And in fact, if they were bad, I sincerely doubt that he would talk publicly about, him having a different opinion. Regardless, it sounds to me like Episode 8 will be a bold new direction for the Star Wars franchise, and that perhaps the lines of light and dark will continue to be further blurred. And I mean, in that respect, both Daisy and Mark say that they were really surprised and shocked by their initial script reading of Episode 8. So it seems like it's going to be crazy. It seems like it's going to be exciting. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, leave a comment and a like. I appreciate it and it helps me out a whole lot. Thanks as always. May the Force be with you.